Welcome to the CANape Quick Start. In this video, we'll be talking about using multiple configurations with CANape. Before we dive into specifics, I'd like to talk about what a configuration file is and how it differs from a project file. The project file is the canape.ini. This defines the CANape environment and it outlines all of your main global settings for the project. This includes your networks, devices, and so on. The configuration essentially defines the task. This can be all of your user preferences, such as what should be recorded, what should be displayed, what pages you have, and so on. If you have too many project components in one configuration, it can cause multiple different issues. First of all, the number of measurement signals is limited by the bandwidth, so if you have too many signals measured, it may slow down your PC. PC memory also cannot support large configurations, so if you have a limited amount of RAM, you may not be able to have as much of a configuration. Overly large configurations load slowly, and also Windows places limits on the number of allowed display elements. So this is the motivator for multiple different configurations. Now there are a couple different ways to have multiple configurations. First, you'll see that you can load a partial configuration. So the yellow portion is the global portion of the configuration. This is your main configuration. However, you can also add or import partial configurations, as you can see by the little purple and blue box. If you stack these together, you'll have your main configuration and two modular partial configurations that you can load and unload at will. Now you can also load partially. So if you import a configuration, you can also tie it in with the main configuration. So these are the two solutions you can use CANape for. CANape supports nested configurations. So as you can see in the tree on the right, you have a structure basically, a hierarchy, if you will. The hierarchy defines the order of settings to use. So the main configuration at the top will be the priority, and then you'll go down the list. The new config 1 and 2 will be equal priority, but they will be under the XCP sim demo main configuration. So the tree has a structure of priority. Each partial configuration also has at least one page and it has its own display color. Certain elements also cannot be separated from the configuration, such as measurement objects, recorders, display pages, windows, and virtual signals. To begin our demo, I've simply created a blank CANape project. My device is already set up, so you won't see this step. As we discussed in our introduction, the structure of configurations will determine the order of priority. This configuration will serve as our top level. At the top of my CANape project, you'll see that this tab is called Main. I'm now going to save this project so I can save this configuration. When I click the Save button, my Windows File Explorer is going to open. This is prompting me to save my configuration. You can see here that the file type is .cna. This is, again, the CANape configuration file. Now that I've saved my configuration in my Windows File Explorer, CANape now also shows me main.cna. The asterisk next to the file name means that it hasn't yet been saved. When I click Yes, CANape will save and close this window. Let's throw a couple windows into our main configuration now. I'll choose a write window and a trace window. This will be our main command center, so we can always refer to the write window and trace window if we have any issues with the project. When I open up my trace window, you'll see my device is pre-populated. This is because the devices are configured by the canape.ini, which is the global project settings. The configuration does not determine the devices. As I resize windows to fit them to my monitor, I'd also like to point out that you can make devices visible. Even though your devices are pre-populated in your trace window by your canape.ini file, the selections you have, such as which devices are visible, is configured into the canape.cna. I've now saved my main configuration, so let's make some new ones. In the Symbol Explorer, you'll see this tab called Configuration. When I right-click on this, you'll see a menu appear. The selection I want to make is called Configuration Manager. This is the tree structure I mentioned before. When I click Add, it will allow me to create a partial configuration. I can choose either an empty configuration or import an existing configuration. I'm going to choose an empty configuration. I'll call this file calibration.cna since this configuration will be used for calibration in my project. You can also see the display name says New Config 1. This is the tab that will show up at the top of your CANape project. I want to rename this as well. I'll click the Edit button and rename this to Calibration. Now, after checking that my configuration looks good, I'm ready to press OK. I can verify that my display name and my configuration name both say Calibration. The Calibration tab now appears at the top of my project. This is my new partial configuration. Each partial configuration will have at least one tab and its own color. This part is a little less exciting since I'm just doing some project setup. I'm going to look through my device list and I want to pick a couple calibrations for this configuration page. I'll choose a couple transmission calibrations from my virtual ECU. I'll grab the engine torque map and I'll throw that in a map curve window. Once I resize this, I can grab a couple more calibrations just for a general calibration window. So let me grab some wiper calibrations. I'll choose my wiper speed calibrations and I'll put these in my calibration tab. These parameters are called automatic duty, high duty, interval duty, and low duty. These are the calibrations for my windshield wiper speed for my simulated ECU. Now that I have these in my project, I'm just about done with my calibration tab. This configuration will be the one I want to use when I focus on calibration. Now that we're done with this, let's make another. Open up the Configuration Manager again. Right-click Configuration on the Symbol Explorer and select Configuration Manager again. Let's add another blank configuration. I'll focus this configuration on measurement, so I'll delete the file name and I'll call this measurement.cna, and my display name will also be measurement. Let's say I pressed OK too soon and want to change the color after I've created it. Just press Edit, and then you can pick your new color. There are many standard colors, and you can also create custom colors. In this project, I'm just going to choose orange for my configuration. Now that I've pressed OK, you can see my new measurement tab has appeared. Since I chose orange for this configuration color, the tab is also orange. I'm just going to do a little bit of setup for my measurement configuration, and I will grab a couple automatic transmission measurements for my simulator. I'll grab vehicle speed and I will grab engine speed. Now that my measurement list is set up, I will go ahead and open up my simulator, and just for the time being, I will run a short measurement. I'll start my measurement without recording, and I will accelerate for a little bit just so you can see some activity on the graphic window, and then I will briefly stop my measurement. Now that my configurations are set up and I recorded a small sample, I'll save my project. The asterisk will go away next to the configuration because my configurations are now saved, and I'll open up my configuration manager. If I don't want to measure in this project right now, I can deselect the measurement configuration. When I press OK, my configuration will reload and I'll only have main and calibration. Now let's say I want to do the opposite. I want to measure but not calibrate. I'll reopen my configuration manager and I'll select my measurement and deselect my calibration. This is going to give me a warning that just says I have some unsaved changes, but that's all right. CANape will reload my configurations again, and calibration will no longer be visible. I'll reopen my configuration manager once more and deselect all of my configurations. Now I'm just left with my main.cna, and this is my top level configuration in my configuration structure.